When you first start using Pixinsight, there is a lot to learn, but after some time of using it, you find that there are some processes that get used almost every time. In this video, we're going to go over the top 5 processes within Pixinsight that are used pretty much every time you process an image. And with this, I will go over a few examples of what each function does. However, keep in mind that this is a general overview, so we're not going to go too far into depth. Let's dive into Pixinsight. So now we're in Pixinsight, and I decided that I'd bring up my image of the jellyfish nebula that I took back in February as a way to show a good example of these functions. And the reason for that was because the project that I saved had everything already open there, and I closed out everything I don't need for this video, and we'll go over all the stuff that we need to use. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the screen transfer function. Now this is Pixinsight's method for auto stretching, just to give you a preview of how things look. Like I just said, it's a preview, it's not an actual stretch. If we look at this image right here, it's actually stretched with the auto stretch, and now it's not stretched. And the way to stretch it back out, there's 2 different methods that you can use for screen transfer function. And the first one is the STF auto stretch icon up here, and this really just does what you just saw. It just gives it just that auto stretch to give you an idea of what the data is that you have. If you want to cancel that out, the way to cancel it is to click this icon right here, and that sets it back to unstretched. Now before we get a little bit further in, every single process that I am talking about can be found in process, all processes, just in case you don't know where else it is in this list here. The other way that you can do screen transfer function is to actually use the process itself. And the process itself works very similar to hitting that button up in the top where you just hit this little nuclear icon. And that does the same exact thing that it does up here. However, the caveat for this one is that if you scroll in a little bit, you have to scroll down to get this to happen. You can take these sliders and adjust it a little bit. Sometimes this screen transfer function is just a little bit too much on its own. So if you take control of it a little bit and tweak it on your own, you can make it look a little bit better. And there we go. I like the look of that. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Histogram Transformation. And this is what you use to actually stretch the image. And the way to actually stretch the image is, let's take what was in screen transfer function and put it up here. And you see that this bar changed right here. Okay. Now, if I wanted to actually stretch the image, I could drag and drop the triangle here and drop it, and the image would be stretched. Or I could hit the square here. However, I want to do this a different way. So let's reset screen transfer function and this. And we can also just select, this one is image 5 dBE. Okay, so before we do anything, we need to open up a real-time preview. And if we wanted to manually stretch this, we would just take this middle slider and just slide it in this way. And we can see that, you know, a little bit of color showing up. So we'll hit the square to apply it. And then reset. Pull the middle in again. Square. And then just keep repeating until you get it where you want it. STF Auto Stretch is a good place to start though. It gives you a good baseline of where to start, and then you can just make minor tweaks from there. But from here, you just play around with this as you see fit, and you can even bring in this point if you want, but I don't recommend it because it'll just brighten everything up. Then you can move this back out to darken things back down. And then you just hit square again, and your image is actually stretched. Now, when you're processing in Pixinsight, you're gonna use something called a mask a lot. And one thing you're gonna have to get very familiar with is this button right up here. And all this does is it creates a Luminance Mask. Now, if you click it, you see it making the mask right here, but what it's doing is it's just extracting the brightness of each pixel. It's not extracting any color data, it's just how bright is this pixel. And this is what it shows up as, just a black and white image. And the reason that these masks are useful is because they can help you protect certain areas of the sky. So if you drag and drop it right here, and you can't see that the mask is on, but I'm going to hit Control K to show it, and now everything that is in red is protected. So say I wanted to do a little bit of tweak to the top of the jellyfish here, but leave the background alone. This is the mask to do it. However, if I wanted to work on the background and leave the deep sky object alone, we would just invert it. And you can go up here to invert mask, or just hit Control-Shift-I on your keyboard. And then to hide it, it's Control-K. But with the mask being red here, this means that the Jellyfish Nebula is protected and will not be altered in any way, while the background is allowed to be adjusted in a few ways. But you need to get very familiar with this because you'll be doing it quite a lot. This happens all the time. All right, now before we continue, I do have a question for you. If you already use Pixinsight, aside from the stuff on this list, what are you always using in Pixinsight? All right, the next function that you need to be aware of is dynamic background extraction. This function is used to remove gradients and vignetting in your image, and it's always there. Even with flatteners and filters, the sky always has light pollution, the moon phase affects it, there could be some vignetting based on your optics, and dynamic background extraction helps remove those problems that the flats didn't quite take care of. And those problems are always there, even if our eyes can't see them. But dynamic background extraction can pick up on those. This is something you're going to be doing quite often, and because of how it's done, it can be one of the most time consuming based on how in depth you want to be with it. Now, if you want a little bit more detail on dynamic background extraction, up in the corner is my Soul Nebula video. Go ahead and check that out after you're done with this. Like I said, this is just an overview. All right, and the last function that you need to be very familiar with is the Curves Transformation function. This process is frequently used for further stretching than Histogram Transformation can do. And the thing about it is you can use it to boost colors and saturation. So let's say I use this mask here and just place it on. That way the sky is protected, and then just go ahead and hide it. Then bring up a real-time preview using Curves Transformation. Now say I wanted to bump up the saturation. I can just bump it up, and I'll really go overboard here so you can really see what it does. But most of the time you'll just be doing tiny little tweaks. What if I wanted to bump up the RGB? You can really mess with it. Curves Transformation is exactly where you mess with the hue, the saturation, the luminance a little bit, and each color. So you're gonna have to get used to this, and you're more than likely always gonna have a mask on it, so that way you're only messing with your object and not the background sky. Or if you're trying to select a certain object, you might have a mask on just a certain area while leaving the rest of it alone. That way you can take it and just, boost the color somewhere. And it's something that you're gonna use every single time. But that's it. That is the top 5 processes used in Pixinsight that you're probably going to use pretty much every time. Now, I will pick a time to go over each of these individually in separate videos, but this is just the general overview. If you found this video helpful, please do like, comment, and then maybe consider subscribing. I want to thank you for watching. Clear skies.